Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Lara May, a clinical pharmacist specializing in functional medicine, as well as a certified yoga teacher and Reiki master. I run a truly integrative health coaching practice encompassing functional medicine lab testing, yoga and meditation, and a sprinkling of Reiki energy medicine. Join me here on Light Body Radio to break through your health plateau and come into alignment with your natural vitality. Hello and welcome to Light Body Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Lara May, and today I have with me Reed Davis, double board certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist. He is a globally recognized expert in functional lab testing and life medicine. As the visionary functional diagnostic nutrition, Reed has pioneered the FDN certification course, which has empowered over 4,000 practitioners across 50 countries to take charge of their clients' health. With more than a decade of experience as health director at a Southern California wellness center, Reed has personally guided over 10,000 clients to optimal wellness, making him one of the most sought-after clinicians in his field. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to talk to you. So tell us how you came to be passionate about this work and really what got you into it.
Thanks, Dr. Laura. I, in 1990s, was in environmental law and conservation. So I thought at the time that I was saving the whole planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees. And that was a business. And it was good money and stuff, but I really started to wonder about people. You know, if you see enough dead birds and fish and stuff, you wonder. And, I was healthy, but I didn't want anything sneaking up on me. So I went from, again, environmental law, conservation, saving the planet. There's a lot of bad things out there, to just working with people. And I went to work at my son was a high school athlete back then, and I was taking him to a wellness center for chiropractic, and just to keep his edge in the sports world. And man, I just kind of fell in love with what they were doing there, all natural health and that kind of thing. And so I went to work to help them build their business. But the owner said, "Hey, Reed, this is an amazing opportunity that I just so thankful occurred, and it changed my whole life." And she said to me, "Hey, I'm going to get my diplomat in nutrition. You could come along to all my classes and courses, and you could work with our patients in between classes to get some experience as a nutritionist." So I jumped on that, and I immediately fell in love with the face-to-face working with the public. Just, oh my God, I can't believe I could actually try to help these people. And so, unfortunately or fortunately, what I was learning really wasn't adequate. People were coming in our office back then, and they'd seen 6 or 8 or more practitioners. Some had been to a dozen. I'm still sick, still got my complaints, or most of them. And I thought that was a total ripoff. And, I was out riding my motorcycle one day, and I was thinking about the people back at the office and the cycle of trial and error that they were in. Again, many had been to a physician and were told nothing's wrong with you. Your blood work looks normal, and they know something's wrong. Or they've been given some diagnosis that really wasn't very helpful. And so I, in my infinite wisdom, and I said, I'm going to be the last person they need to see. Now, this was almost silly at the time, and naive, at least, Doc. But, that's what I determined I would do. And very, very fortunately, in addition to all the nutrition, and I became a personal fitness trainer and body worker and all these different things. I worked there for 10 years running lab work, that's sort of my claim to fame is was running more lab work than any 5 doctors put together, according to the labs. They would call me and say, who the hell are you? And I just liked running labs. So I had great mentorship from the lab directors, and these were the true pioneers. They call me one now, OG. I thought that was old geezer, but so these were the real OGs back then. Was learning from these research scientists and lab directors, and some were doctors who had even started their own labs because the standard lab work just wasn't getting it. They wanted to look deeper. They wanted to look farther upstream for underlying causal factors.
Mm-hmm.
And me, as a non-licensed practitioner, that was perfect. I didn't want to give them another diagnosis and here's your pills or something. I wanted to find out what was really wrong. So I dedicated myself to that. And for the next 10 years, I worked there and ran thousands of labs on thousands of people. And I'll just sort of summarize, jumping forward to the point where I really had not only gotten this great mentorship, but made my own observations. So in that 10 years, face to face, Mr. Jones, Mrs. Smith, and their kids, these are the observations I made. And so I recognized patterns that became part of and the foundation of the methodology that we now use and that I now teach. So after 10 years of that, everyone told me I should be teaching. So I put a course together, and that has grown phenomenally over the last, since 2008, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
years. And now that's what I do. I teach a course in functional lab work as it applies to all natural drug-free therapies and self-directed it's kind of lifestyle medicine, but it's based on the lab work, which you
Yeah.
know a lot about.
Yeah, it's but let's just move right in then into like why functional lab testing is different than traditional blood work, because I get a lot of clients that say, well, if especially since in functional medicine there's not a lot of insurance involvement, and so that's one of the things that people want to know is, well, how am I going to pay for this, and or what's the most
Yeah.
economical way to go about it? And they ask, well, can I just get this lab work done with my physician where the insurance will pay for it, and then I can come back to you and we can work, with that. And, my response is, well, there are some things that I can order that your doctor will, but I promise you, if I give you my list and you take it to your physician, they're going to look at you and shake your head and say, you don't need all this. And, or they're not going to know what half of it is, quite honestly. And that's not to be offensive. That's just the truth
Yeah.
and the difference between how an allopathic physician is trained and how a functional medicine practitioner practices. So can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about that difference?
Oh, absolutely. So, doctors today are pretty bound by their standard of care, and that's dictated by the great powers who appreciate or always have sought monopoly on medicine. So this goes back centuries, actually, but the monopoly on
Mm-hmm.
medicine is um, sort of perpetuated by the standard of care. So physicians can only run certain labs. It's just how they're licensed. It's how things work, and that blood work that they run, the CBC and chem panels and things, can tell you if you're really sick. They're not a bad thing, and physicians are there to help, just like everyone wants to be helpful. And yet, if it isn't sort of bad enough, it won't show up. Again, I learned this early on. Remember, I had a lot to learn when I started 25 years ago, but I had nothing to unlearn. I was an open book as far as, well, what labs can I run? And
Mm-hmm.
everyone coming in our office with their complaints had already had their blood work done, and it didn't show anything in many cases because it wasn't bad enough yet. So there's a difference between clinical, which is where you're diagnosed and you're treated appropriately, and for that one thing, usually one problem, one part, one fix. So that whole diagnosis and treatment thing was being rejected by the clients coming and patients coming into our office. And so the labs that we run would be considered more subclinical. So they're pre-disease. And you could have a lot of symptoms before the actual disease occurs, in which case then you're diagnosed and you're treated with drugs. And so we want to find out why you're feeling so crappy when your physician said everything looks normal. That's a part of it. There's a lot more to it, but that's kind of in a few short words. So those labs, as you said, they are often considered research use only. So they're really good labs. They look far upstream into hormones and immune system and digestive and detoxification. You can look at the function of things, functional medicine thing, and see what's out of balance. So the term I started using was healing opportunities. So with these functional labs, and some of them they won't be covered by insurance until they're approved and in common usage among your quote unquote regular physicians. So they keep labeling them research use only. And well, that's what people need to do. Research what's really so it's fine, but it is out of pocket. So it's a true investment in one's health. And that's a bar pretty high for some people because they think they're already paying for insurance. Why should I have to pay out of pocket for anything? Well, that's just the way it works right now. And so I have no control over the lab fees, how much they cost. They cost. Labs are in business.
Yeah.
They have to stay in business. So they have to have margins to allow them to continue to serve us this way. And so, yeah, we just pay the lab fees, whatever they are, because we need the data. And it's that data that is the trick, if you will. Now, here's the difference between what I teach and functional medicine. And if it's okay, I'll just continue with kind of.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah.
So when I started 25 years ago, we were considered alternative medicine, which using these research use only labs that weren't and still aren't in some cases, haven't been adopted by standard medicine. And so that alternative medicine, because we help people, it was effective. We got people better, when nothing else was working. So it became complementary to standard medicine, complementary, meaning patients were starting to ask their doctors, what about diet and exercise and stress reduction? And physicians aren't trained in that.
Yeah.
But they started, integrating a little bit. And matter of fact, that became the next in the evolution, went from alternative to complementary, where patients are asking about it. Hey, I've been seeing this wellness guy and I'm feeling much better. And so then it became integrative, where now the patients were demanding it from their standard physicians. So alternative, what my dad called voodoo, and people thought we were witch doctors or something, became complementary. That hey, you do want lifestyle involved in the pick, and then it became integrative from so alternative, complementary, integrative, meaning it was insisted upon by the public. If you're a physician and you're not doing something integrative, complementary, or even alternative, then they're going to find someone else who will. And then finally, because functional medicine is the next sort of step in that evolution, and they do look farther upstream for causal factors and things like that, but they're still bound. And this is why so we're kind of like, well, what it's going to evolve into. Remember, we're still completely alternative because we're very pure about underlying causal factors are all that matter. And so that's where functional medicine is headed. It is still, in my opinion, too bound. They're still licensed and bound by the licensure, the standard of care. And so physicians can go to a weekend, they can go to A4M for 4 or 5 days and take all these courses in functional medicine approaches, and yet they're still going to go back to their offices bound by their standard of care, bound by the insurance company, who's they're getting sent, and insurance will only pay for certain things. So they're still very much handcuffed. They're not totally free yet to do
Hmm.
what we do because we're not bound by those limitations. We don't take insurance. It's what someone's willing to, and so we can look exclusively for those underlying causes, conditions, and then teach that person how to live themselves out of the problems they've typically lived themselves into with the assistance of the environment and other factors, causal factors.
Hmm.
So it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything you said is so true. And I actually recently myself went to a functional medicine physician within the health group that I actually work for. And more of it was covered than typically would be.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a functional medicine practitioner within the integrated medicine arm of this health, typical allopathic health corporation that I still work for. She ordered, I found the itemized invoice, and it was over $2,000 worth of lab work for me.
Wow.
And it ended up, I ended up still paying over $200 when it was all said and done. Now that's fantastic, but like you said, some of what she ordered was still seen as, like you said, research-based or experimental only,
Mm-hmm.
according to the insurance. And that's, like you said, that's just how it is. So I think it's good for people to understand that doesn't make it unnecessary information. It actually makes it more pertinent, and I think more important, because it needs your nutrient deficiencies or your different levels of toxicities of certain things. Again, getting that root cause, getting to the true foundation of, like you said, why you're not feeling good. Where's the inflammation coming from? What's actually causing your symptoms? So we can resolve them, not just cover them up with some sort of band-aid approach. So that also leads us into why it's so critical to have a personalized health strategy. So what is your perspective on that?
Well, we're all different. We all come from different backgrounds. We all know that socially is true, and geopolitically that's true, but it's true genetically as well. And so, um, my ancient ancestors, talking really ancient, they lived in a certain area. They had certain flora and fauna they could consume. And that flora and fauna that they consumed over millennia and millennia really formed their genetic makeup. And so when you eat that way, what they call an ancestral diet, you're more likely to be healthy. You're getting all the macronutrients and in the right ratios, protein, fats, and carbs, and you're getting the micronutrients, the vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, antioxidants, trace elements, phytonutrients that are appropriate for your genetics, because that's where those genetics were dictated by your ancient environment and the food sources that were available and things like that. And so if you eat that, you have at least reasonable expectations that you could be healthy. And you can't be happy if you're not healthy, right? So
Right. Yeah.
now, so you hear about ancestral diet all the time, but which one is the key? Because if you're from the Philippines or Borneo, it's not the same diet. If you're just going to eat steak and eggs because that's good for me, it's going to make that person very sick. So so the answer to your question is called metabolic individuality, and that's my approach: is to find out as close as possible about at least we can give people a good starting point on their ancestral, the true ancestral genetic diet for you. And then you still have to mitigate against the effects of the current environment.
Mm-hmm.
You probably heard this word before, and I think your listeners probably have all heard this word before. It's stress. And so, but there's a lot of different types of stress. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I read an article over 20 some years ago, plus, that stress was the number one reason for 80% of all doctors' visits, some form of stress. and 50% of all disease. So I studied stress. What does that do to the body? What are the effects on the hormones and the immune system, and digestion and detoxification, and all the systems that have to be in alignment, that have to be functioning properly. And so stress is bad. And it's not just mental, emotional. It's not what you think all the time. You don't like your job, your kids are misbehaving, you have financial trouble. All that stuff matters. But the body responds the same to other forms of stress. Like for me, if I had a complaint, it'd be the physical injuries that I've had from sports and extreme sports and motorcycle riding and all these things. I've got owies that kind of never went away, so you got these aches and pains. So you have your mental emotional stress, and I have my own way of dealing with that stuff. But I have the aches and pains of a well-used body. Now I also have the chemical stressors, and this is what's insidious and ubiquitous, are the chemical stressors from the environment we live in. There are, and remember, I came from environmental law and conservation into the health space, so I have a pretty good handle on some of this. The toxins and poisons that are actually allowed in our food. It isn't just air pollution and water pollution anymore. Matter of fact, that has improved, because all my old hippie lawyer friends have been suing the government and the military and big companies for since the 70s, when the laws were enacted, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. I grew up on the Great Lakes, and Lake Erie was dead. One of the 5 Great Lakes was dead. The rivers pouring into it were so polluted from factories around the area that the Cuyahoga River caught on fire in 1969. It caught on fire, the river. And so that kind of environmental contaminant we've seen a lot of improvement, again, with the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act signed into law in the early 70s. You can't pour that crap in the rivers anymore, and you can't spew it into the air. Remember, you used to hear about acid rain. Okay, we don't hear so much because we don't allow those emissions and things. But the food's actually gotten worse, and the things we drink out of have gotten worse. And so we're still being subjected to this environment that's very toxic. So what I said was that a genetic way of living, if you could live the way your generations, 500 generations ago, ancestors lived, at least in terms of the foods, you could have a chance. You have reasonable expectations, but again, mitigated against the amount of stress, whether it be mental, emotional. I mean, we're under tremendously different levels of the mental. Matter of fact, we don't even know sometimes how bad it was for us. I mean, if you just watch TV an hour a day, that's bad for you.
Well, there's so much war and all this TV built around conflict.
The war for territories, those go on, but the war for our minds is the real war being waged by those that would have monopolies and control. And so I don't want to get too far into that, because I'm here to help people with investigating underlying causal factors. How do you sort out that stress? And again, it's the mental, emotional, the physical aches and pains from injuries and trauma, and the chemical, like ubiquitous and super high levels of chemicals that we're subjected to legally. I mean, it's kind of insane what's allowed to go on. So we're all of those are contributors to what I call metabolic chaos. And so there's a lot of that going around. It's why, out of the top, I got a friend who says this all the time, Dr. Tom O'Brien, he'd be a good guest for you. He's one of the world's leading authorities in inflammation and gluten intolerance and all these things that contribute to metabolic chaos. He says out of the top 30, modern countries, in terms of health, our population is ranked number two, from the bottom. The top 30, sort of developed countries, the
Yeah.
health of the United States is ranked two from the bottom. Why is that? It's just, and I'm not getting on a soapbox here. I just want to tell you that there's an awful lot going on that if we knew enough about, we wouldn't allow it. We wouldn't allow it.
Right.
And for our kids and things, it's, I'm an old guy. I've learned to crop up against, I live out in the country. I'm sure I'm still sucking up a lot of pollutants, but I eat only organic food. I eat as little out of bags or boxes or cans as possible. My wife and I grow our own food, and order only, really pure beef and other, animal products online. There are producers around, but it's expensive, and we're just blessed to be able to do that. But for the kids today, and you look at the obesity and the number of cancer cases of our children and autism and all this other stuff, it's not just magic that's occurring. It's occurring for reasons that we know about,
Right.
and
Yeah.
trying to educate people out of. And so I'm not sure which one of us is freezing up. I'm getting a little interference on the wavelengths here, but you can still hear me okay, Dr. Laura?
Yes. Yeah, you sound great.
Fantastic. So it's fascinating what's going on, and we're living in a time when we actually still can make some changes. Like I say, the true battle is for our minds and what we're being fed. We're being fed a lot of unhealthy things.
Yeah. So, with that being said, you have this acronym that uncovers health issues called HIDDEN. What does that stand for, and what does it entail?
Yes. Well, thanks. Remember, I spent 10 years running thousands of labs on thousands of people, searching for the underlying causal factors, rather than diagnosis and treatment and maintenance of disease and symptoms and things. And so I found that with the chronic stress-related downward spiraling conditions that our patients were showing up with, we're desperately searching, by the way, for answers, that the most common dysfunction was within the hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and nervous system balance. And that just turned out to spell HIDDEN, HIDDEN. And
Okay.
oddly enough, a lot of it's not even being looked for. It's not that it's so well hidden. It's just that standard medicine doesn't look at the level we look at. So we go far upstream, and that's kind of a discovery I made, was that, wow, all of these, mostly women at first coming in with all of their problems had multiple causes, and all these causal factors, again, hidden upstream, in those areas, the hidden areas, are having an effect on each other too. And Laura, that's not really focused on very much. I mean, you don't hear that too many other places. Not only are there multiple causal factors, all these conditions being diagnosed, those causal factors are having an effect on each other, and it's not even singly measurable. You can't even measure some of these interactions. And that's coming from a guy who teaches a course in lab work. I've run as much lab work as anyone on the planet, and so they tell me. And I feel very confident in saying that you can't measure all this stuff. You need a system of assessment that covers as many healing opportunities as we do have labs for. Again, HIDDEN. You could throw in oxidative stress, and other things, but you look at these areas and you see what's wrong, what's out of balance or dysfunctional upstream, and that's what we work on. And we don't just prescribe medicine for it. We teach people how to eat according to your genetic diet that we just talked about a little bit, and the importance of rest and how to make sure you're getting really good rest, because that's so critical. Exercise goes without saying. And then all the
Mhm.
various ways to pull apart the different types of stress. We mentioned, the mental emotional stress, physical aches and pains and trauma stress, and how that creates downward spirals in your body. And of course, the ubiquitous chemical and environmental stressors. And by the way, there's also biochemical, because your body produces its own toxins. And then you could throw in existential stress, psychospiritual, from, you know, having no purpose in your life, which isn't taught in school.
Right.
Um, and so you have this, and so we call it looking for the hidden stressors, the investigative process. And what do you do with that data? Well, you customize for each metabolically different person a custom DRESS, diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation program. And I've done a lot of interviews, hundreds, and sometimes, depending on the audience, we'll talk about just the D. We could just spend an hour or two or 10 talking about diet,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
Talk about rest for an hour. And so you get the idea that this is a very broad and comprehensive discussion about the hidden stressors, hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, and what I mentioned. So that's the lab work. And it's important to invest in this lab work. Without that data, we say test, don't guess. And then
Right.
in terms of putting together an individualized dress for health success, it's a trademark term because it's so effective and successful. Dress for health success: diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, supplementation. And people say, well, isn't there other things I need to work on? No, because anything isn't covered by the right diet and rest and exercise and supplements goes under stress reduction. So whatever
Mhm.
your complaint is, or multiple complaints, there's it's stress reduction is removing the causal factors. Again, if it's toxins in the environment, we can test what are those toxins. You can find out, and we find out from some of these tests that, hey, your perfume is creating chemical stress inside your body. Your personal care products, your household cleaning products, your new
Yes.
drapery, your kids' pajamas are so full of fire retardant, they're toxic as hell, and things like that. So this idea of stress reduction, how about foods? There are foods that you can eat that I can't. I can eat, you can't. And it's so individualized. It's amazing. And there's really good lab work, which, by the way, for 25 years, I've been using this mediated release test for 170 plus foods. No one eats that many foods, but you test, you find out what you're sensitive to and eliminate it. And depending on the person and how much those foods were contributing to their problem, is the level to which their problems seem to fade away. And they do. And I can tell you case after case after case where we've done this. So the idea of stress reduction involves testing for hidden stressors. And a lot of
Mhm.
stuff through assessments, and you get to know your patient or client. And mental emotional stress is one thing. Not really an expert in that. I tend to have very solid, you might call spiritual um, ways of handling that kind of stress. I don't let it bother
Sure.
me. You know, it's just
Right. But
it's
even
just,
that's hard for people, like the whole, like
you
just the
gotta
simple
have
term, let
faith.
it go,
Yeah,
because
to me,
it
you
can
have
be
to have
a real
foundational.
challenge.
Yeah. So for me, faith and it helps resolve a lot of that. And then with the chemical stressors, again, you can eat, you know, organic food and things like that. Try to, they say you can't empty a bathtub when the water's still running. You got to shut off the source is to the best of your ability, and then mitigate against it with the other parts. So anyway, so HIDDEN, investigate, and then for an individual. By the way, those labs, when I say work with an individual, you're clinically correlating. That's the term, clinical correlation. Does these test results, not the ones your doctor ran, he said you're fine, or here's your diagnosis and pills. It's does that explain why this person feels so lousy and has ongoing challenges, whatever they are, tired, fatigue, skin, hair, muscles, fat, all of this, the results of chronic stress and poor environment and diet and things. Yeah, it does. They correlate really highly with it. The person, and people are saying to us all the time that they don't understand how come their regular physician didn't run these kind of labs and didn't give them this data and explain why they feel so lousy. Oh, we don't know why. Here's your pill. It'll mitigate the symptoms. Well, the symptoms aren't the problem. They're the results of the problem. So when we explain why you have those symptoms, and through data, it's all very scientific. There's nothing weird about it. It's just not fully integrated yet into standard medicine. Standard medicine may never evolve fully. It thinks it has functional medicine, but they're still handcuffed by standard of care and licensure and all these things that hold them back from doing what we're free to do. So when you investigate and you highly clinically correlate, everyone goes, wow, now thank you for explaining it to me. They're so grateful for the data and the explanation. And then they go, now what do I do? Well, what do I do? Well, DRESS. You have to eat right. You have to go to bed on time. You have to exercise. You have to reduce stress in every way it can be identified. And there's lots of labs for that too. And supplements are important because food sucks. It's not the food my grandfather, both my grandfathers grew. I grew up in Canada until I was a teenager before I moved to the States, and I did become a U.S. citizen, of course. But I grew up eating food out of the ground, and now I've returned. My wife and I grow our own food, and it's unbelievable. The tomatoes I had in my eggs this morning taste like tomatoes.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Homegrown tomatoes are amazing.
You just feel the nutrients. They make a difference in your life. So the reason we supplement is because you can't get that food anymore. So it's missing the micronutrients, and then of course, are you breaking down and absorbing it? That's where the functional tests for digestion come in. So if you could get a hold of really good organic food, maybe you could take less supplements, but you need them to substitute for what's missing from food. You can also use them for supporting certain weak areas, digestion, the adrenals, your hormone. There's lots of ways to support weak areas for a while, until you rebuild those areas. And then you can also stimulate like your immune system. If you're going on a plane, take some things that would stimulate your immune system, zinc and magnesium, whatever there's lots of things. And then finally, supplements are good for self-treatment. You don't always have to go to the antibiotics or there's lots of natural ways people have been self-treating for millennia. And these are well-known things. They're just not patented, so they're cheap. They're not the expensive drugs that are patented that foster that whole way of thinking and way of commerce. And they want a monopoly, by the way. They don't like what we do.
Oh no, yeah. Even, I mean, it's amazing whether it's a nutritional supplement or it's a chemical that is naturally produced in your body, like a GLP-1, for example, that the pharmaceutical company want to completely control because it helps us, and they want the full benefit of being able to control how it helps us and how much, unfortunately. So
yes, there's complete unanimity between your opinion and mine.
Well, cool. So, all right. So you talked a little bit about your Dress for Success guidebook. Tell people.
So you froze up there for a minute. Hopefully the recording will
I'm
be able
sorry.
to eliminate that. So yeah, we have
Yeah.
a book called the Dress for Health Success Guidebook. And your listeners actually could go to fdntraining.com/Laura May, LARAMAY, in your honor. So yeah, we have a free book to give away. It's called the Dress for Health Success Guide. Is that what you asked me about? Or were you talking about some other
Yes.
books I've written? Okay.
No,
So
looking where people could find it.
yeah, that guidebook, again, so what I teach is called functional diagnostic nutrition. The name I came up with 15 years ago for my first teaching experience, and it just has stuck with us. So now there are FDN, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioners all over the world. We're in 50 countries, and because it kind of caught on. My first class that I taught wouldn't go away, so they just kept more and more and more. So I developed the whole program for the graduates, and we call ourselves FDN practitioners. So fdntraining.com is our website. And if you go fdntraining.com/LARAMAY, Laura May, you'll get a free Dress for Health Success guidebook. And hopefully it will give you some insights and instruction and guidance to living your best self. We're not there to, that book's not going to cure cancer or anything, but it's going to help you live your best life and maybe work around the edges of whatever diagnosis you have. Again, we don't do diagnosis and treatment. We fix what's wrong instead.
Right. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I've really enjoyed all your wisdom and your experience, and really appreciate it. I appreciate you and everything you've done and are doing. So thank you so much.
You too. And I want to say that lots of pharmacists have joined our community. We've taught not just nurses and health coaches, a lot of really serious people, even physicians have taken the course that I teach. And they'll find out more about it if they want to. If you want to, just go get that free Dress for Health Success guidebook. And you keep up the amazing work you're doing, Dr. Laura. Would you like to be on our podcast?
Yes, sure. I would love that. Thank you.
So we'll swap podcasts. You come and be on our
Yeah.
podcast, because I'm sure my listeners would love to. We're so unanimous in our approach and way of thinking. I think it'd be great to have you as a guest. So kudos to you too, what I'm trying to say.
Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely swap info and get that all scheduled and everything. So, but again, thank you so much. And everybody definitely check out the Dress for Success guidebook. And we will look forward to having Reed back. I'm sure we can, like he said, dive in and do 30 minutes to an hour on any one of these topics more in depth. And I think that'd be super valuable. Sure. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
it. All right,
everybody,
we will catch you on the next episode.